Greetings, Earthlings. Adam Savage here in my cave. I'm enjoying some Haribo berries. Not healthy, but delicious. Oh God, I love these. The Museum Hotel in Wellington, New Zealand has these in their minibar, and they're really good about refilling the minibar at night. And so whenever I stay in Wellington, I eat that whole minibar every night. It's so many good candies. We don't love the gummy candies as much as they do in like New Zealand and Australia, frankly. I think the US could show a little more love for the gummies, but that's not why you're tuning in here. And it's not the purpose of this video for me to talk about candy. I am answering questions submitted by tested patrons. Tested patronage is a lovely way to give back to the channel. We really appreciate your support, tested patrons. I've answered some of your questions more than a dozen times. Not the same question, but questions from the same patrons, because I do Q&As a lot. If you'd like to know how to support the channel and be a patron, just take a look in the instructions below. Instructions? Why am I drawing a blank on the correct word? You know what I mean. Anyway, today's question comes from David Martin. And David says, on MythBusters, did you do the car builds in-house, roll cages, safety equipment, like 6-point harnesses, or did you farm them out? The answer is most of the time we did them in-house. A few times we farmed it out. Hold on just a second. Sorry, my nose was bothering me. I had to take care of it. Never happens. All right. Most of the time we did it in-house. So roll cages were something we did a fair bit of on MythBusters. We did a lot of notch cutting of steel chromoly pipe on the milling machine using hole saws, which is noisy as hell, but nothing works better. I mean, I'm sure there are better techniques, but like that was what we used and it worked great. We were lucky enough to have a wonderful builder named Don Best for several years on the show, Don showed up sort of vat grown to work on MythBusters. He was a certified EMT scuba diver, safety diver, who also had been a firefighter, and he was like a car modder who had built off-road vehicles and had crossed the Rubicon Trail here. I mean, Don, last I heard, is working in aerospace and having a great time, which is fantastic. We were delighted to write him letters of recommendation and see him expand his universe, going off to, I think, Seattle to work for one of the big aerospace companies up there. Anyway, Don Best was our hero and incredible shop guy for several years. And during those years, Don built a lot of roll cages and did a lot of welding into the cars to attach our 6-point harnesses. 5-point, I think, most of the time. Yeah, you really don't necessarily need that crotch one. It's just 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4-point. That was what we usually used for the car stuff. And we were good at that. That was a kind of a turnkey operation, installing those harnesses. I still have a couple of them from the show in storage. When it came to putting in roll cages, which we had to do on the speed bus, on the speed bus, we got a quote from somebody. It was like $20,000 to put the roll cage in. Now, that sounds like a lot of money, and it totally is a lot of money. But the companies that build roll cages, that's not a lot of money to the people they service. So we were a little shocked by that price at first, and then we kind of realized, no, this is what the market will bear. You are a racing enthusiast. You got to put a roll cage in a thing. You hire this custom shop. This is what they do. That's what they charge. We were delighted to have Don build that roll cage. I know that we farmed it out a couple of times when time was of the essence. When you're making a TV show like MythBusters, where some of the budgets for something like Lead Balloon, like the overall materials budget for Lead Balloon was maybe like, $1,000, as opposed to JATO rocket, where when we cut truck containers in half and use them as ramps in the desert, the materials cost on those shoots were in the tens of thousands of dollars. So as a production company, you get our production company, Beyond Productions, got an overall budget from Discovery to make the show, and they've got to figure out a way to make that budget expand and contract to fit the episodes. So in general, you always want to save where you can save so that you can spend when you have to spend. So absolutely, we contracted out a couple of roll cages when time was of the essence, but for the most part, we did them ourselves. And in the early days, I don't know that I did do some TIG welding on a roll cage, and I can't remember what it was on. No, I can't remember what it was on. I definitely installed at least half a dozen harness systems into various cars that I drove for the show. And that's fun work. That is really fun, right? Like, I had an experience here. I own a beautiful 1982 Toyota BJ42 right-hand drive Land Cruiser. It is my baby, and it's not my daily driver because I don't drive every day by any stretch of the imagination. I live 2 blocks from this shop, so it's a one-wheel that I ride everywhere. But that Land Cruiser has been in my life for almost 20 years now, and I love it. My son, Thing 2, has been driving it around and using it. And when he first started using it, he wanted to use it to go rock climbing with his friends because they're avid boulderers. And he wanted to put a new back seat into it. And I had a back seat that somehow I threw out on Savage Builds. I don't know why. You could see Simone Yach, Laura Kampf, and I driving in that Land Cruiser in our Mad Max episode of Savage Builds. And Laura is, I think, sitting, or Simone, I can't remember who was sitting in that back seat. That back seat disappeared. So then Thing 2 found another back seat, and it arrived, and he pulled the cruiser up here to the cave, and he was like, so how do we put the back seat in? And I said, well, this thing goes here, so if you put it here, you'll be able to see where the holes are, and then you're going to drill through those holes and put some bolts in. And he was like, I'm going to drill through a car? And I'm like, it's only sheet metal. And he was like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, so put it down, mark out where the hole goes, take this drill, pop it through. And I know that, like, look, the people watching this, a lot of you are, like me, a self-selected maker and, like, lover of modifying our things. So it's hard to remember sometimes just how remarkable it is the first time you took your car, drilled a hole to make some extra functionality happen with your car, and that functionality actually worked. That thrill is real. And the look on my son's face at the end of that, like, hour-long escapade of putting in the bolts, stainless bolts with, washers and everything, he was just like, that was so much fun. And he didn't say that was so much fun, but, like, that was what was really happening. Like, he didn't know that this was a landscape, right? Of being able to modify, you just drill through your car and then put in a seat, and the 3-point belts will keep people safe in there. And, within reason, it's totally fine. I mean, look, this isn't a car that's got a roll cage, crumple zone like modern cars. With all those caveats, being able to modify your thing, it's like, for those of you that have worked on your car, like when you repair a thing and it makes your car drive way better, like when you replace worn out engine mounts. If your engine mounts are worn out, your car rattles when it starts up, and it's banging against the frame. You can hear it. You order some new engine mounts, as I did for my Volvo from RPR Discount Volvo Parts over in Berkeley, and pop them in, and all of a sudden you start your car and it's whoom, and you no longer hear that rattle. You're like, oh, this is awesome. Yeah. What was the original question? Oh, did we modify our stuff in-house or did we farm it out? Yeah. Modern cars are much harder to work on and modify than they used to be. And that's a shame. I mean, my friends who do stunt driving in LA say that you actually need to have a computer programmer on set in order to be able to get a modern car to drift, because all of his electronics are geared towards keeping it from doing the things you see cars do in action movies. And there was, my experience, which was buying my first car, a Volvo 245 DL 76. I drove that car from 2000, probably up until, I think I gave it to Jakub Kulishek, Czechoslovakian artist who I used to live near. I think I gave it to him for free in like 1997. So I drove that car for 7 years. I replaced its drive shaft. I rebled the brakes. I taught myself everything I know about repairing cars on that car. And the Volvo was phenomenal. You could practically climb in the engine compartment with the engine in order to work on it. It was delightful. But I have gone far afield from answering your question, which I think I answered in the early part of this video. Tested patrons, I love your questions so much. David Martin, thank you. Martin, thank you so much for your great question. I love talking about this stuff. Again, you want to know how to be a tested patron? Look below. Otherwise, yeah, you keep submitting your questions and I'll keep answering them. Thank you, guys. I'll see you next time.